what is that what we need to recognize, remember and realize is that our being in this body, our being in this world is not accidental, that we are not here just to carelessly pass the time and get into some kind of one-sided way of looking at things. We are here with a tremendous potential, and we are part of something which is very deeply wondrous. We don't need to go into any big philosophical knowledge or any clever treatise about this or that. When we look at life in a simple way, it will become very obvious to us that every detail of this life, every aspect of this life is filled with so much intelligence, so much creativity. We are taking many of that for granted, and we are often getting in certain roles and concepts and beliefs about ourselves and life, and that occupies our life so much that we don't see and realize that we are in the middle of something sacred. We are in the middle of something so deeply valuable, and we are blessed to be here. Just to bring the attention to the basics, we take the sun for granted. And we know that this life process on the earth is made possible due to this unique coordination of the movement of the earth with the sun and all that what is interconnected with it. If any of these movements are slightly changing, the life on earth won't be possible. Everything is going so minutely coordinated. So we only need to just observe the way things are in life, and with the scientific development, the possibility of understanding has become much more deep. But we have to recognize this wondrousness in ourselves, and we see that how everybody is so unique. Even though we have billions of people on this planet, everybody is unique. No two persons are the same. Even twins, when you observe, you see that there is some difference. There is a great respect towards each one of us. And that is what we need to consider. I'm not asking you to agree with me or blindly disagree with me, because blindly agreeing and blindly disagreeing means just remaining on a logical, rational level. But when you consider something, when you look what is indicated with it, then you are not remaining only on the level of the words. Then you are going deeper into your own sensibility, and the perception becomes experiential understanding. And that is what is going to make the difference, because intellectually one has heard so many things, one can understand many things, but that's not changing our life. For example, I don't know how it is in the cigarette packets here, if it is written that the cigarettes are dangerous to the health, or I don't know, but in some countries it's very obviously written that smoking of this packet of cigarette can be harmful to your health and can be deadly and all that. But those who are into smoking, they pay the money, they buy it, and they go on smoking. And this is not people who are illiterate and cannot read. And these are not people who are, so to speak, dumb. So what is happening? We understand many things intellectually, but still we are following certain other aspects in our life. So intellectual understanding is not sufficient. You have to see what is meant with all this. And especially when it comes to the deeper understanding of ourselves and life, it is necessary to very carefully bring the attention so that we are not just settling with words and concepts, but realize that the words and concepts are only attempting to point towards something which cannot be reduced into words and concepts. When it is coming to certain pragmatic areas, very practical things, we can say it's a chair and this is a pot, all that, it's enough for the practical functioning. But when it comes to the deeper things, when we speak about love, about harmony, about beauty, about God, this is not just the word. These words are an attempt to point out something which one has to experience in the deeper state of silence. It is not just only thinking about something. It is not only making discussions about something and having different opinions for and against. It is understanding the possibility and the limitation of words and concepts, the possibility of the logical, rational way of approaching life and its limitations. We start with logic, we start with words, and that is required for the game of the world. That's how we get into the game. Every child needs to get into certain concepts and beliefs about ourselves and the reality, and so every child gets into different kind of conditioning. Some look easy, some looks heavy, but we all have different past, different impressions from the family, from the society, from the religions, and so on. But to become aware that we have to experientially understand what we are, so that it is not just the intellectual concepts which we have accumulated, which is engaging us and with which we are trying to settle, but come to see, come to understand, come to experience. What am I? Who am I? What is my reality? Because you experience the whole world through yourself. When you say something is good or bad, from where does the judgment come? From that what you carry in yourself as standards, your experiences, your beliefs, your positive and negative experiences and the implications of it reflect in all what we see, in all what we judge, and the way we connect to life, the way we connect to each other. So it is necessary to see that understanding life begins when we start bringing the attention to that what is undercurrently going on in ourselves. And this is the biggest adventure of our life. All the other adventures are not so big, not so challenging. To face oneself and to observe that I'm not just this personality, I'm not just this body, that I'm much deeper, I'm much more mysterious than what I can label and fix. And then to realize your responsibility, your possibility, your potential, and to confront the fears, the desires, the dreams. This is not easy, but that is what the whole challenge is about. And the paradox is, even though it may look very difficult and very complex, when we are ready, it starts simplifying. When we are ready to say yes to life and is ready to understand life, then we see that things simplify. But first of all, we have to recognize the need to look and understand life in a deeper way. If we imagine that just by accumulating knowledge, collecting information, filling ourselves with more knowledge, if that is enough, then of course we cannot go deep. But when it becomes clear to oneself that I need to go behind this process, I need to observe the way I listen, I need to observe the way I react. For example, when you are listening now, somebody is speaking and you are listening. Ordinarily, the attention is focused on what is outside. But as you bring your attention also to that what is taking place inside you while you are listening, whether it is an agreement or disagreement, whether it is doubt or acceptance, whether it is comfortable feeling or uncomfortable feeling, whether it is provoking fear in you or provoking appreciation in you, whatever is taking place, when you start also bringing the attention to these aspects which are undercurrently taking place in you, suddenly you see that you are entering into a new way of perceiving yourself and life. Because you are expanding your vision, you are expanding your quality of perception. Suddenly you are not only using being with the mind, identified with it in a narrow way, you are also going one step deeper and observing this mind. And as you begin to observe this mind deeply, you come to also see that you are not just this mind. Who is observing? And that what you are observing is outside you already. That is why human life is so unique, because unlike all the other living beings on this planet, the human being has the capacity to understand life more deeply, to experience the reality in such a way that not only that we realize we are part of something natural and mysterious, but also manifest our capacities and energy to mold the life process, to participate in the creative process, and realize the sense of that what is meant with expression, godliness, divinity. When you see that you are that wonder, you are not separate from the source, that the creation is not somewhere else. The creator is not someone else, that you are one with it. Not in this narrow conceptual idea of the so-called I, but in a deeper way. And that is what we can experience. In India there is a very beautiful indication where it is said, God is like a dancer. So there is a indication that God is called Nataraja, the dancing Lord. And this indication is very interesting because the dance and the dancer cannot be separated. In all the other art, there's an artist and the creation. You paint, you sculpture, and they're all outside, and after the painting is done, you are outside it. But dance is not separable from the dancer. And it is an indication that the creation and the created, the creator and the created are not two separate factors. It is one phenomenon. These are inspiring and encouraging orientations which becomes meaningful to us only when it becomes your own experience. Otherwise it is all words. You can philosophically discuss it or agree with it or disagree with it or make all kind of things around it. But when through your own experiential encounter with yourself in the state of inner quietness, where you are mirroring everything, where you are observing all what is there without taking sides. That is what is meant when Jesus says, judge ye not. It's a very interesting hint, the meaning of which becomes realizable only through practicing. What happens when you are not judging? Of course, the judgment comes automatically. We don't need to do anything for it. The moment we are in an encounter with something or anyone, or good or bad or dangerous or nice, all kind of. But we don't need to follow it blindly. We don't need to identify with it blindly. We can observe it. And that is what makes the difference. It is not that we are trying to suppress our mind. It's not that we are trying to put away all our judgments and trying to control it. That is the misunderstanding with which many people get into all kinds of traps, because they are trying to control themselves, control the mind. About controlling, I remember an anecdote from the Tibetan tradition. One man came to a Tibetan mystic, Marpa. And this man said, I want to stop my thoughts. I don't want to have all these thoughts. I want to just be quiet. But this man was in a kind of struggling mood and wanted to get rid of it. So Marpa looked at him and said, oh, just one thing. For the next 24 hours, don't think about monkeys. The man said, but I have no problem with monkeys. Marpa said, just take care that next 24 hours, think not about monkeys. The man thought it's very strange why he's saying like that. And Marpa said, you come after that and we'll clear it completely. You can imagine what has happened. As he started going, he started seeing anything, and he said, "Is that a monkey?" And wherever he looked, some sound, some movements, the thought of the monkey was coming. And by, wherever he looked, it looked like there are monkeys around. And then he went to his place, closed his eyes and wanted to sleep. But he started seeing monkeys all around, pulling his hair, pulling his ears, pulling his nose. And he couldn't even lie down and rest. Next morning he ran back to Marpa and said, "I don't want to stop all this, but get rid of these monkeys. Please help me from these monkeys." Marpa smiled and said, "That's what I wanted to make visible to you, how our mind is working. When you fight against something, you give so much energy to it, you get trapped in it. And that becomes an entanglement. When you can understand that, don't make this into a fight. Thoughts are only symptoms. Just like when there is wind and the water in the lake is forming itself as waves. In the same way, behind the thoughts there are factors which are taking place where your attention has to come. Your desires, your fears, your preferences, your prejudices, your concepts, your beliefs, your clinging. So as we bring the attention, it is not only that we are just seeing certain things, we also see the interconnected factors which is very important for us to see. It is not trying to find a reason why something is like this or something is like that. So listen very carefully about this aspect. I'm not saying try to find reasons why something is like this. I'm not asking you to analyze your mind. What I am reminding about looking in is to learn a different quality of being with yourself, where you are being like a mirror, which mirrors all what is coming in front of it without choosing one against the other. The mirror does not say, "Oh, this is a beautiful flower, I want to have it." And the mirror does not say, "Oh, that what is there is some dirt, that I don't want to have." The mirror reflects everything. And the interesting thing of the mirror is, even when it reflects the most dirty and unpleasant object, still it is not getting dirty or unpleasant. The mirror remains pure. And so is also our consciousness. Our consciousness can mirror all that what comes and goes. And yet, it remains pure. That is why, when you are going deeper and get familiar with your deeper nature, you will realize, whatever be the past, when you are not clinging to it, you have the possibility to be free from all the negative impact of your past. That is also why it is said in the mystical teachings, whatever be your past, if you are ready in this moment to understand and take the step in the right direction, that is what is decisive. There is a very beautiful poem from the great Sufi mystic Jalaluddin Rumi, where he says, even if you have committed 1,000 mistakes, whatever kind of sinner you are, come. When in you there is a readiness, you are welcome. Because it is not your past, it is your present decision, your present willingness to look and confront what is making the difference. When deep within you are ready, even if it is meaning to face the unpleasant aspects in oneself, to face the meanness, to face that what we call ugly and horrible. You may be seeing the ugliness and horribleness in somebody else, but when you see that, that is what you are also carrying in you. It will be not so comfortable at first. You may be ashamed of some things which happen to you or which you find in yourself. And then one wants to cover it up and wants that nobody is seeing it, nobody is coming even to suspect that anything like that is there in oneself. But when you understand it rightly, you will see that all what we carry in us is like raw material. You don't need to fight against it, you don't need to try to condemn it or to suppress it. You need to understand, you need to see it, you need to face it. And this is the whole difference. We are not trying to be somebody else. We are not trying to achieve something to prove to somebody that I am worthy or I am okay or I am special or this or that. You are already carrying that what you are seeking in yourself. Only we have been so preoccupied in all kind of concepts and images about ourselves and life that we don't realize it, we don't come to recognize what really is there. This is what in the Tibetan mantra, which they often repeat, gets reminded, where in the Tibetan tradition they use a mantra which is very commonly uttered, that is Om Mani Padme Hum, which means the treasure which you are seeking is in the lotus of your heart. The whole thing is what way to bring the attention to experience it. And this is the challenge. The Russian mystic George Gurdjieff called this the work. I also tell my friends who are doing different activities and being with all kind of things, the work behind the work. You may be doing this, you may be doing that, but if you understand rightly, bring your attention to that what is taking place in you undercurrently. Remember that you are in a life process which is sacred. Don't forget it. Don't let the automatic labeling and reactions overtake you blindly. Whatever negative factors are pulling you in all kind of directions, don't unnecessarily get lost in it. Don't get pulled into it. Don't buy into it. Learn to observe. You don't need to fight it. You don't need to suppress it. But see that it is your chance. It is your freedom. And when you understand it rightly, it is your responsibility and your chance that you can watch all this. And when you can watch, already you have a little distance. Then you are no more enslaved by it. And the next thing what happens through that is, when you have this distance to this reactions which otherwise overtake you, you create through that a certain inner space where you give the room for your deeper intelligence and your creative potential to come to manifest. I have been reminding in the last period to use these 3 C's as an orientation. It's a playful way to bring the attention, but it can be very helpful. The 3 C's are consciousness, compassion, and creativity. You need to stay wakeful, you need to stay present, you need to be observant of what is taking place in you. That is the first requirement, because if we are not deliberately ready to confront, without this intention, without this inner determination, our mind is pulling us in all kinds of directions. We are like a driftwood. But when you can see that we don't need to follow this automatism blindly, it is necessary for me to stay wakeful. So consciousness means taking in a delicate way this responsibility to look at yourself, to look at all that what is taking place in all your interactions. And the next aspect what is connected with is compassion. That you look sympathetically. You don't go into comparing and competing and judging blindly. You don't follow that tendency automatically and get lost in it. Notice these reactions which arise, but then consider compassionately. Consider yourself compassionately. Look at yourself as a friend. And then you will see that is the secret. When you want to understand yourself or anybody else, you have to look at it sympathetically. You have to look at yourself sympathetically. You have to look at the other sympathetically. Compassionate means you are not following the habitual approach of competition and comparison and power. Instead, you recognize that without taking these standards which are produced through this kind of competition and comparison and power approach, when you connect directly to the situation of the other, you connect to the moment, what you experience is something more deep, more significant. Then you understand the other in such a way that it is not only putting a label on the other, and it's the same with yourself. Otherwise, our life is limited by these standards, these values, these concepts which we have collected from the upbringing, which are in the society, which on a level of a game, it's okay. Because for each game, you need to have some kind of standards and goals and roles. When you play basketball, you say you have to take the ball only in the hand and put it in this basket. But when you play soccer, you are not allowed to touch the ball. You have to only kick, and you have to kick into the goal post. And each game has its own rules, and when you don't go according to those rules, it's called foul or it's a mistake. And when you can do and achieve that, then you're successful, you're a great player, appreciated, and all that. As a game it is beautiful, but when you believe that our life is all about all this, and you start judging yourself and putting yourself down when you are not able to go into this kind of achievements, where do you land? When you are not able to prove to yourself that I am special. I have achieved this. I'm so good like that. And you want to show to everybody, you want to prove to all whom you know, and make it clear that I'm not just anybody, I'm somebody special. This is the trap. This is the misunderstanding. If we get too much into this approach of being somebody, being special, having to prove and hold to all the standards that only when I have a big position or when I achieve so much power or get so much wealthy, then only I am okay. Otherwise you are not worthy, you are not anybody. The idea of the loser, it is taken too much seriously that one believes that this is the reality. Where does all the depressions come from? Is it a sickness? When you courageously and carefully confront the whole thing, then you will see it is our basic misunderstandings which pull us into all kind of entanglements, and that can become a sickness when we imagine that that is the thing, that is the reality, that is the truth, and go on repeating the same steps. Then we are rotating in the same circle. That is why it is necessary to gain a certain distance to your own identity through the inner wakefulness, so that you see what is operating in oneself. When I judge somebody or judge something, from where it is coming? When you are condemning somebody, when you are putting somebody down, when you are looking up at somebody, what is all taking place in you? Let it become conscious to you. It is not to put yourself in a corner or to fix yourself in some frame. It is just to let these aspects which are working in you become transparent to yourself. It is discovering yourself. And you have to go into it with the curiosity of a child. You have to approach it with a certain quality of lightness and playfulness. It's not something serious that you have to prove and to manage, but at the same time, there is an urgency for it. Because when you are not trying to understand yourself, when you are not taking this initiative and going consequently with it, the automatism is continuing to pull your energy in the habitual tracks. See it clearly. And through that, see your responsibility and also see your chance. Because when you see that, it is you who can make your life into a blessing, and through misunderstanding, you can let it become a curse. When you clearly see it yourself, that it is not what comes from outside which is making our life a blessing or a curse, it is the way we take what life brings, the way we respond to, the way we go with it, what is decisive. It's not comfortable at first to really see that we are responsible, because we are so much used to blaming the other. My parents, the society, the working place, the government. It's very comfortable when we can put the responsibility somewhere, because then we can continue in the same role. We can continue to go with the same automatism further. But when you take the responsibility, you are approaching in a different way. You are starting to look more carefully. You are starting to be with it more realistically. And as it becomes clear to you that whatever happens, we have the possibility to make the best in each situation. And understand it very carefully. It is not that it will be always according to how we want it. Many things are happening in life which are not comfortable, which are not easy, which are sometimes painful. But when you see that there are certain things which are not in your hand, certain things are happening, and we are part of a great life process. It is very deep, very vast. We cannot control it. But we can see what way we connect to it, what way we respond to it. The day you clearly see that you have the chance, you have this possibility to respond and start taking this step consecutively with a real inner determination, with a sense of urgency, then you see that this life is a great blessing. Then you spontaneously come to develop a feeling of gratitude and joy. Not a joy which you try to produce, but a joy which is there within you. And the more you are in touch with yourself, the more it can come into manifestation. It is in the recognition that you are in the middle of wonder. When it is not because somebody is telling you and you are agreeing with it that it is taken, but when through your own observation, through your own courageous encounter with the reality, it becomes your insight. Then it's not a belief. You're not agreeing with somebody or disagreeing with somebody. You recognize that it is so. And that is why I emphasize on your experiential understanding. I don't want you to agree with me or disagree with me blindly. That is not enough. That is very cheap. But what is required is that you bring the understanding through your wakefulness. You accept yourself with all what you are, with all your so-called negative sides, with all your madness, with all your trips, all your craziness, all your greed, all your ugly sides. And I tell you one thing, when you really look at it without the usual kind of judging and fighting, you will see something else. You will see that behind all this, in everyone there is a quality of innocence. There is the child who is trying to come in terms with the life, who is wanting to be loved, who wants to be happy, who wants to love and be loved, and who is trying in his or her way to make it. So when you are not judging and comparing and trying to put the other in a corner or put yourself in a label, when you connect with the quality of wakeful friendship, you start discovering these aspects. And this is very, very important, that you realize that this is our individual responsibility. That's what I mean when I said don't go into blaming the others. You may have all reasons to blame. Somebody may be so unloving to you, so mean, so horrible, and you may want to give back in the same coin. You want to prove that, no, I can also do that, and I can hit you back, and I can create trouble for you, and I can be really nasty to you. This is what comes automatically in us, to fight back, to struggle. And we try to change the world, we try to change the other. That is a political kind of approach. And that way we remain caught in the game level, on the periphery. And what I am asking is, see the need to look behind, to look beyond, to look deeper than the periphery. Normally people are preoccupied with the actions. We try to judge each other from the actions, what somebody is doing. That is the way the world is. But those who are insightful say, it is not just the action, it is what is behind your doing or not doing, what is decisive. Somebody may be doing that what is apparently looking good, but if it is full of calculation and is manipulative and there are all kinds of things, then they are not free. It has nothing to do with this person being bad or that there is something to be condemned, but it is not clear, it is not free. But somebody may not be doing the so-called good thing, but is deep within wanting and ready and attempting in their way to do something. What comes finally in the whole thing is what is the undercurrent intention, from where it is coming. There's a very interesting story in the Indian mythology. It's about a priest and a prostitute. In a town lived a priest and who was trying to do many things and who believed that he's a person who is doing something for God, and he was preaching and doing this and that. And opposite him, in another house, lived a woman who was working as a prostitute. And he used to look at this woman in a kind of way that such a bad woman doing these bad things. And as it happens in the story, they both die and they are both coming to the heavens. And to the surprise and to the shock of the priest, this woman is given a very respected and high place in this heavenly structure. And he cannot believe. He thought that somebody has made a mistake somewhere. And he wanted that someone should explain to him why this injustice is happening there. So he asked the person who was responsible, I think that there is some mistake happening because this woman was a prostitute and she was doing all these bad things, and I have been doing everything so good for bringing the message of God and trying to tell everybody what is to be done and how to go and all that. And now I get just a normal place here, and this woman gets so much respect and special reception, what is this injustice going on? The person responsible said, it is very simple. You were doing all these things, but you were always trying to prove how great you are, how special you are. And you were always looking at this woman and judging and putting her down and say, this bad woman, and being very proud of yourself. Whereas this woman, she was compelled into such a life. She couldn't go differently. But she was always looking at you and was very much seeing you as an inspiration and wanted to connect to God. So she was always thinking of God and she was always wanting to be connected. Even though apparently she has been living a so-called bad life, but deep within her heart was longing for something deeper. And this is a very significant story because it is showing something about the nature of the deeper reality. We can try to make the world believe that we are like this or we are like that. That is not what matters. What matters is from where we are connecting each moment to life. That is why when we bring the attention, we can see all these aspects, the positive and the negative, the comfortable and the uncomfortable. And through being able to see, to mirror all this, we have the chance spontaneously to respond. When we see what leads to where, what leads us to darkness, what leads us to light, what leads us to more entanglement, and what leads us to clarity and freedom, then it becomes a natural development towards fulfillment and freedom. I always found this word good and God very interesting because they are very indicative. Why is, so to speak, the goodness important? When you are being good, what are you doing? Goodness gives you a certain capacity not to get trapped in the conditioned, narrow idea of yourself. So when you are orienting in life to be good, not to prove to be good, not to make an image of it, but you look in each situation, what is good, what is loving, what is really creative. Then it helps you to bring more attentiveness in your life. And it helps you to go beyond the narrow idea of yourself. Therefore, the goodness leads to godliness. And the word good has 2 zeros. The word God has only 1 zero, 1 O. The world is dualistic. There is good and bad. When you are orienting to the good and not fighting against the bad, but just your focus in living that as wakefully, as lovingly, then it helps you on your inner journey to attain to a deeper clarity, especially when you see that you are not trying to make it into a kind of prestige thing. There is a very well-known anecdote from the life of Bodhidharma. When Bodhidharma came to China, The Emperor Wu was very appreciative of him and was waiting on the border to receive him. But Bodhidharma was a mystic of his own kind. He came looking like a barbarian. And not only that, he had one shoe on his head. And he was walking in a way which, for the normal way of looking, like being crazy. But the emperor kept his quietness and waited till he came and then asked him, "What is the teaching of Buddha?" Bodhidharma said, "Nothing." And then Emperor Wu was a little bit surprised because he waited for an explanation and some kind of elaborate answer, and he just says in a very precise way, the essence of Buddha's teaching is nothing. So then he thought what to ask next. Then he said, "Okay, I have been doing so many good acts. I have been creating many monasteries and creating many publications of Buddha's teachings and feeding so many monks. What is my reward for all this?" Because the monks used to tell him that when you do all this good, you have great rewards in the other world. So he asked, "What is my reward for all this?" Bodhidharma said, "Nothing." And the emperor was quite surprised and said, "Nothing?" And then Bodhidharma became even more sharp. "If you continue like that, you will go to hell." Then the Emperor Wu didn't go further in that. But this is part of a conversation, and this is very, very important to understand. Bodhidharma was not trying to make fun of this emperor. He was touching it in a very deep and direct way. Buddha was teaching that all that what we see as solid reality in the world is part of a changing and passing phenomena. That they all arise from nothing and dissolve into nothing, because it is not just a thing. It is not just the visible manifest aspect, what is behind it. So when Bodhidharma said, as a response to the question, what is the teaching of Buddha? And he said nothing. He was referring to this. He was referring that it is not just a thing. We are used to connecting to the world on a material level. We are identifying ourselves very much with the body and say, "I am so and so." And we take our name and personality often too seriously without considering that that is only a passing aspect of our reality, that we cannot settle with it, we cannot hold to it, that everybody who is born has to die one day, that is in the game. But because it is not so comfortable to consider those aspects, we go on around it. Bodhidharma was putting it directly and straightly and said, nothing. And to the second question, what is the reward for all these good deeds? Bodhidharma said nothing. This is very significant because in the Buddhistic understanding, to awaken to the nature of no-thingness, what is in the original expression in Pali called shunyata. It's the best translation for that is no-thingness, that it is not all a thing. So this nothingness, to realize that, is in other religious teachings when it is said that it is realizing the divine, realizing God, realizing your true self. There are different ways to indicate to the experiencing of the deeper reality. So Bodhidharma was referring to that. And then when the Emperor Wu continued, nothing? Then he said, if you go on like that, you go to hell. What is that? Was he wanting to be unfriendly to the emperor, or was he trying to make something visible? When you consider, you will see that when we are calculating, when we do something good, and through that allow the heart, and don't go into the calculative process, then it becomes an elevating process for us. But when we are calculating and say, what do I get for that? What is my benefit? Then we are still caught in the calculative mind, which is our trap. Then we are still caught in the idea of the so-called I, who is saying that, when I have this, then I will be better off. When I get something more, then I will be more special. So this what we call the ego, which is normally in the worldly level operating, now coming on a spirituality level. Now when I do all these good deeds, then I am better than the other, I'm more special. So it's a more spiritual ego. But it's the same marketplace affair. It is getting lost in the game and not realizing that you have to go beyond this game. And going beyond calculation means going beyond the entanglement in the dualistic way of perceiving things. It is not condemning anything, it is not putting anything down. And we create our hell by entangling ourselves in this calculative process. That is what Bodhidharma was indicating. And this is what we have to be aware, that we have the possibility to make our life into that what we really are capable of. That is to awaken to our divinity, awaken to the truth, awaken to the beauty of this existence. That is what the inner flowering is all about. It is not proving to be somebody, it is not a competitive process. That is why everybody can be awakened without being better than somebody or less than somebody. And nobody is losing anything. It is not that when somebody is gaining something, the others are losing. In the material level, there is a certain amount of something, and then when somebody takes something, then the others have less of it. But in the deeper level, it is not like that. It is also like when you share your love, are you losing something or are you gaining something? When you share your joy, are you losing something or is it becoming more? On the material level, when we give something away, we have less of it. But when you share your love, when you share your joy, it is increasing in you. It is becoming an enrichment also for you. So when you are really being loving to somebody, it is not just for the other. Other may benefit, may not benefit. But when you are sincerely being loving, you are benefited. So you have to be also thankful. That is the right understanding. It is not trying to prove who is superior and who is inferior and getting continuously lost in this calculative process. It is realizing that this life is an opportunity. And as human beings, we have this chance to awaken, to flower, and to be deeply fulfilled. But it is a process of discovering. It is a journey of understanding and seeing who we are, what we are. So it is not made easy. It is not that we have everything made in such a way that it is like a ready-made food you can just take in and it's all cleared. We have to go through the whole playful process. And that is the beauty of it. That is what makes life so alive. Because the more you are wakefully confronting the challenges, the more you realize that when you don't let yourself get pulled into the negative reaction and stay wakefully enough, it is opening you new possibilities which you may not have seen before. You may not have observed in yourself. You may not have realized that this is possible. You discover yourself. You discover life. So bring carefully this attention to that what you are, that what is deep within your reality. That makes the difference. I would like also to take some time for any questions or anything which anybody has to say or express. So I interrupt at this point and then take time for questions. If any questions are there or anything to say or express in anyone? Yeah.
So the process of witnessing oneself in the mirror, I think many of us, at least I do, catch myself judging myself, others, things, objects. How do we stop that just from the process of witnessing it? Oh, okay. There, I am judging myself again. Does that then dissolve on its own after a while?
That is the direction. You see, if you notice that this automatism is going on and that you don't need to identify with it. And once it becomes clear to you, this is the clue, this is the chance. Let the automatism go on, but when you don't identify with it, when you don't go with it blindly, and when you don't fight against it blindly, you are no more giving energy to it. And when you are not giving energy further like that, you see that sooner or later it slows down. It is like when you are driving a car. When you take the feet away from the gas pedal, from the old momentum it will still run for a while. But then it starts slowing down. You are not giving energy to it. If it is a slope, it may still run for a while. And if it's uphill, it will come more quickly to a stop. But you see that this is the process of the inner clearance, where you are not identifying blindly with it, where you are not taking sides, where you are not trying to hold to it, where you are not fighting against it, watching it, noticing it, letting it come, letting it pass by. Each time you are just remembering to notice it without going in this interfering way. You see that this is a deepening of the consciousness, what is taking place. But one has to be very, very patient. And how does one become patient? We cannot say, oh, now I have to be patient, and we have to watch our impatience. We have to observe the impatience taking place, not identifying with it, not fighting against it. And you will be surprised that when you are not going with it blindly, and when you are also not fighting against it blindly, it opens you a new door. Otherwise, what we are doing when we are impatient, we say, oh, I'm getting nervous. Where's the chewing gum? Is that a solution? Or what are we doing there? It looks so harmless. You know, here you are familiar with it. It looks like it's not a health problem. Some dentists even recommend that it's good for your gums. So why should we make a fuss of it? Keep on chewing. No. We are playing a trick. Something is working in us, and we are trying to find an escape, a distraction through the chewing. So when people feel nervous, you have to be a little bit humorous, and you be ready to smile at yourself. Then you can see it, that is not. And this is one of the simple, harmless things, apparently. But then we can also go into smoke. It seems to be interesting because many people are smoking, and there's so much interesting associations in the publicity. Don't be a maybe. And say, yeah, wow, I decide for it and smoke. That's what they want. But we have to really see that we are trapped through all this when we go unconsciously. We think that others should not manipulate us. But we are getting manipulated as long as we don't take the responsibility. We are not only getting manipulated, but in the unconscious way of going, we are also manipulating the others. So we are also not so completely innocent in that sense. We are in the same game. We have to recognize that we are manipulating, we are getting manipulated as long as we are going in an unconscious and automatic way in life. And our chance is when we learn to look at it, look what is taking place in us, and recognize that we have the capacity, we have the potential to be fulfilled, to be free, to flower in our divinity. And because this potential is there, it is so unique. But not everybody who comes to the chance of going deeper takes the chance. There are all kinds of ways to get distracted, to get pulled into all kinds of other things. So we have to be aware of all these traps, how we avoid the confrontation. It's not only the chewing gum, it is not only the cigarette, it's alcohol, drugs, And you can make from everything also a drug. You can get into working. You know this expression, workaholic. Why is it called workaholic? It's made to sound like alcoholic. Because one can make out of doing such a engagement to avoid the confrontation with that what looks like tension, that what looks like restlessness, that what is frightening to us. And often we are trying to force ourselves to prove something or to achieve something, and aggressively going with our body in trying to manage things. It may look like in the beginning we are successful, but in the long run it is harming ourselves. It cannot work longer. That is, with alcohol you can see very easily. First one starts with few sips and it makes one a little bit easier and relaxed, and conversations becomes more funny perhaps, all right. And then one more glass and one more bottle. And then whenever there's a problem, one says, oh, why go into all this worrying? Take the bottle. And it becomes a habit, and one does not realize that we are playing a trick on ourselves. And after a while one feels so helpless. One believes that I must have this, and without that it's too much, it's impossible. And it is with all drugs. Once you get into it, you get into a belief system, and it becomes almost like hypnotic belief that you think that without it, it cannot work. How to go beyond it? It is not that somebody else can do it for you. Somebody else can bring your attention to these aspects, but when you see that no chewing gum, no alcohol, no drugs, also the legal drugs, that is not something which can really bring the clarity and fulfillment in our life. We need to confront our issues. We need to confront who we are, what we are, and experientially understand it. That makes the difference. It is not somebody else has to give you something. It is not that you have to achieve something which you don't have. And that is the whole paradox of it, that it is seeking that what you already carry in you as a potential. But one has to go into this hide and seek game so that it becomes your recognition, your realization that you are that. In Sanskrit there is an expression for it, Tattvam Asi. You are that. They are not even calling it God, because then the mind makes something out of it. You are that. You are the source. You are the essence. You are the divine. You can indicate it in this kind of way, but when you say you are that, it is giving the least possibility for the ego to make something in a comparative level for it. In the Christian teachings, there is the saying, only the truth can liberate you. What is the truth? Is it the truth which somebody tells you? It is not just another word which you collect from somebody and you believe and agree or disagree. That's not. Truth is what you are. When you experience yourself in the inner state of silence, that is what gives you the attunement. That is why one of the great mystics from the last century, Ramana Maharshi, asked people to question themselves and ask, who am I? And go deeper into the experiential understanding of your true self. So this has to be the orientation. Non-seriously, non-strugglingly, with a sense of playfulness and humor. Stay inwardly wakeful, without taking sides, without identifying, without being for or against, with all that what is arising. Let thoughts arise, let feelings come, let all kind of things come, but as they come, let them also pass by, let them also go. Don't try to chase them away. Say, oh, now come, get out quickly. Just, nor when some beautiful thoughts are coming, oh, such a holy thought, I must hold to it. Now I'm becoming really spiritual, and one wants to make something out of it. Watch also this, how the comparative process is coming from the back door, wanting to prove now how your meditation is getting higher and deeper, special. This is the same worldly tendency which is coming from the back door. If you can see that, smile. You don't need to fight against it, you don't need to punish yourself, you don't need to condemn yourself. That is all not the understanding. That is why in the Zen tradition this reminder to go with the orientation of the mirror-like consciousness is very much emphasized. It is a very deep understanding. And it is something which we can, through the practice, deepen. And one very important thing, you should never forget that what we do is only one aspect of it. Because life is supporting, because life is helping, it becomes possible for us to realize it. Not because we are now doing it. Our part is to make ourselves available and wait. So in the Sufi tradition there is the saying, you take one step towards God and God takes 1,001 steps towards you. And this is very, very important to remember. It is not exaggerated when it is said like that. What we can do is very small, but that is necessary that we do that because that is our way of making ourselves available. That is our sign. There are so many ways to get lost. There are so many barriers which are possible. And when one thinks about it, it all looks like some unsurmountable. It's impossible to overcome it. But because life is supporting us also in such unconceivable, impossible looking ways, it becomes possible. So even when in certain moments everything looks so hopeless, where you feel so helpless, where everything appears so senseless, so meaningless, watch that this is also the judgments coming from the same mind, the same conditioning, from the same standards, from the same entanglement in the world, and don't settle with it. Watch that and let that also pass by. And this way, stay rooted in the consciousness, and that is what is making the difference. Yeah.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the last part again? Like when everything goes down, like, and you feel so helpless, what else just happened?
Whatever way it appears, like it can look meaningless, it can look senseless. It's like how our mind can interpret in certain moments, and that's how it can pull us into resignation and depression and bitterness and or all kind of negative processes. But if you can see that this is also based on the same standards and values which we carry unconsciously in us, it's from the same judgments that this also is arising. So observe it and don't get trapped in it. Notice that you don't need to buy into it. And then you see that also passes by. Because in another way of looking at it, it's all an energy process. It's all a play of energy. When you don't give energy to these thoughts which are negatively pulling you, then the energy which is there pulls up. And the energy which is not trapped in any of these negative processes is pure energy. And pure energy is pure joy. When you are yourself, when you are in a state of inner silence, without having achieved anything, there is joy. That is what you will experience. Don't just believe me, but don't disbelieve me either. Consider it as a possibility and seek so that it becomes your experiential understanding. Allow spaces of silence. And when you see that it is so, then you know that you don't have to run here and there and fight against this and get all kind of other things to entangle. You need to create a space to face yourself, be with yourself, to allow a state of equanimity. That is our chance. That is why human life is so precious. Because we can make our life a journey to the greatest paradise, but we are also capable to make it into an entanglement in the worst suffering due to our misunderstanding. Nobody else is punishing us. The God is not a punisher. That's why when Jesus says God is love, it is a deep insight into the nature of the reality. When you are loving, you are also attuned into that. That is why people who really allow the love, they see that something beautiful is happening. They also start feeling that there is a beauty which you cannot describe. And you are grateful that you are able to be loving. So, allow consciously, because unconsciously it cannot go deep. Every child comes in the world, is very receptive, but the child is not conscious. Therefore, some of the heavy experiences and the impressions make one closed and come into all kind of entanglements. But when through the wakeful way of going about it, we are able to remain available to life without going into this usual judgment. That is what I mean. Even when in the normal judgmental level it looks senseless and meaningless and hopeless, watch all these judgments, see that these are labels put by the same conditioned mind. Watch that and let it also pass by. And that is how a moment will come where you are without being anybody in particular. You are not trying to be good or bad. You are not trying to be superior or inferior. You are not going into the comparison and competition. then you are. And this state of beingness is the bridge, is the step to your deeper reality. Is any other question or anything else in anyone? If anything is there to ask or to say, we can take some of these moments for that. If nothing else is there, we have in the next days also some gatherings like this. When is it, Amona? Tomorrow? Ah. And anything? On Sunday night. So there will be some possibilities like that. The workshops are basically a support for this experiential understanding, because many things one can intellectually consider and agree or see in that way, but one needs to allow circumstances, opportunities where it is deliberately gone into, confronted. And because we forget, that is the whole game. We forget and we have to again and again bring the remembrance. Therefore, it is good when you are able to participate in some of these workshops. It will be very valuable. Otherwise, we will still have the possibility for some of the questions, if anything is arising in the next meeting, perhaps on Sunday. So we have so much for this evening.
Here you go.